The warning that was laughed at. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with endless empires, advanced civilizations, and untold power. Among the stars, Earth was considered a relatively insignificant speck, a planet caught in its own struggles, too far behind the rest of the galaxy's technologically advanced species. Most believed Earth's influence in the galaxy was limited to its own solar system, a place barely known to the powerful empires beyond. The Galactic Empire, with its countless fleets and warships, had been expanding for centuries, conquering and controlling countless worlds. They saw themselves as the dominant force, untouchable and invincible. But in their vast reach, they had failed to notice a small, unassuming planet, Earth. For years, Earth had been silently observing the galaxy, learning, growing, and preparing. The humans knew that one day their world would be noticed, and they wanted to be ready. They had developed technology far beyond anything the galaxy had seen, but they kept it hidden, biding their time until the moment came when they would make their move. That moment arrived when the Galactic Empire's scouts first detected Earth's location. To the Empire, Earth was nothing more than a primitive world, a backwater planet with no value. They believed that the humans had nothing worth taking. So, with the arrogance that only an empire of their size could carry, they set their sights on Earth. A simple conquest, a world that would easily fall in their hands. But what they didn't know was that Earth wasn't as helpless as they believed. The human leaders knew this day was coming. Their scientists had worked tirelessly, crafting weapons, developing ships, and creating defenses that no one could have imagined. But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't just technology. It was their will to survive. They were ready to protect their home, to fight for their future, and they would make sure the Empire knew they weren't to be underestimated. As the Galactic Empire's fleet prepared to make its way toward Earth, the humans sent a message, a warning. Stay away from Earth or face the consequences. The message read. It was simple, direct, and clear. Earth was not a world to be conquered, not a prize to be claimed. The humans made it clear that any attempt to invade their planet would be met with a force they had never faced before. But the Galactic Empire dismissed the warning with contempt. The idea that a small, insignificant planet could threaten their mighty fleets was laughable. They scoffed at the humans, brushing aside their message as nothing more than a desperate cry from a primitive species too scared to face the future. To the leaders of the Empire, the humans' warning was nothing but a joke. They considered themselves far too powerful to worry about a single planet. Earth was weak, they thought. Earth had no chance. The warning was ignored. The fleet moved forward, confident of an easy victory. The Empire's commanders made no attempt to prepare for anything out of the ordinary. They had never seen a threat like the one that Earth had become. The Empire's leaders mocked the humans' bravery, seeing it as nothing more than foolishness. They continued to laugh at Earth's message, unaware that in doing so, they were walking into a trap. The fleet set its course toward Earth, confident that they could wipe out this insignificant planet with ease. As the massive ships of the Galactic Empire cruised through space, the stars twinkled quietly around them. The Empire's warships were armed to the teeth, with weapons capable of destroying entire planets. But what they didn't know was that Earth was not a defenseless world anymore. The moment the Empire's fleet entered Earth's solar system, something happened that they weren't expecting. A faint signal shot through the vastness of space, and within moments, the sky above Earth began to fill with a strange electric energy. The humans had activated their defenses, and the Empire had unknowingly walked straight into their trap. The first attack came without warning. An enormous energy beam shot out from Earth's surface, slicing through the dark void of space. The beam hit one of the lead warships of the Empire, disintegrating it into nothing in an instant. The shockwaves of the blast rattled the surrounding ships, causing a cascade of panic within the Empire's ranks. The Empire's fleet froze for a moment, stunned by what they had just witnessed. How could this be? A primitive world like Earth had weapons capable of destroying their warships. It didn't make sense. But as more and more ships were destroyed by sudden, overwhelming bursts of energy from the planet, the reality set in. Earth had been preparing. The humans had known their day would come, and they had used the time to craft weapons that no one had ever seen before. The Empire had laughed at the warning, and now they were paying the price. The once confident fleet began to scatter, retreating from the assault, but Earth was prepared for this as well. Human warships, built with technology no one had ever imagined, emerged from the depths of Earth's atmosphere. Faster than the Empire's ships, stronger than anything the Empire had encountered, and deadly in every sense of the word. These warships tore through the skies. Human soldiers, armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, prepared to defend their world. The once weak humans had become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Empire, having underestimated them, now found themselves in the fight of their lives. The Galactic Empire had ignored the warning, thinking that Earth was just another easy target. But now, the humans were showing them that they were anything but helpless. The warships continued to rain destruction upon the invaders. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Empire's once feared fleet was decimated by the power of Earth's response. The humans had given a warning. It had been ignored. Now, the Galactic Empire would see just how serious Earth was, and they would learn, too late, that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Empire would regret laughing at Earth's warning. The consequences of their arrogance were just beginning. The Galactic Empire's once mighty fleet was now in complete chaos. The humans' warning had been ignored, and now the consequences were unfolding in the most devastating way possible. The Empire's commanders had believed they would simply arrive, intimidate the humans, and claim Earth as just another conquered world. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy they did not understand, one far deadlier than they had ever imagined. The initial attack had sent shockwaves through the entire fleet. The destruction of the lead warship had been so sudden, so precise, that many of the Empire's officers thought it had to be a mistake. But then the second ship was destroyed, then the third. In mere moments, entire sections of their fleet were reduced to floating debris. Earth's response was not just powerful, it was surgical. The humans were not blindly firing in panic. They were systematically dismantling the invading force. Panic spread among the Empire's ranks. Communications were flooded with desperate messages, reports of ships being wiped out before they could even react. The Empire's admirals barked orders, trying to regroup their forces, but it was useless. The humans controlled the battlefield. Their technology was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, and their tactics were brutal and efficient. The humans were not simply defending themselves. They were making an example out of the invaders. The remaining Empire ships tried to retreat, but the humans did not allow it. They had been given a warning, and now they would pay the price for ignoring it. From Earth's surface, more beams of energy erupted, targeting the fleeing ships. The energy weapons did not just destroy. They pierced through the Empire's shields as if they were nothing. Ships that had once been considered indestructible exploded in brilliant flashes of light, reduced to nothing more than wreckage drifting through space. The Empire's soldiers, those who had trained their entire lives believing they were the most powerful force in the galaxy, now found themselves helpless. Their weapons were ineffective, their strategies useless. They had entered this battle with arrogance, expecting an easy victory. Now, all they could do was try to survive. On one of the remaining command ships, Grand Admiral Carvex stood frozen in disbelief. He had led countless conquests, had crushed rebellions, had destroyed entire civilizations that resisted the Empire. Yet now he was watching his fleet, his proud armada, being obliterated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. His officers shouted at him, demanding orders, but what orders could he give? Every tactic, every maneuver they had tried had failed. The humans were faster, stronger, more advanced than anything he had faced before. The true horror of the situation dawned on him. The Empire had never bothered to study Earth. They had assumed humanity was weak, that their world was insignificant. But now he realized the truth. Earth had been hiding its strength. The humans had prepared for this moment, had built weapons beyond anything the Empire could counter. And worst of all, they were not just fighting for victory. They were fighting to send a message. A desperate order was given. All surviving ships were to retreat at once, to flee from Earth's wrath and regroup elsewhere. But before the ships could make their escape, the humans made their next move. From the depths of space, Earth's own warships emerged. They were unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. Sleek, fast, built for destruction. They moved like predators, cutting through the Empire's scattered fleet with deadly precision. The human warships did not waste time with warnings or demands for surrender. They struck with brutal efficiency, taking down ship after ship, leaving no room for mercy. The Empire's commanders screamed for backup, sending desperate distress signals to the nearest Imperial outposts. But no reinforcements would come in time. The Empire had assumed they would crush Earth in a matter of hours. They had never planned for a battle, never imagined they would need support. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the ultimate price. The last few ships that managed to escape jumped into hyperspace, their crews shaken, their confidence shattered. They had lost. The Galactic Empire, feared across the stars, had been humiliated. And the worst part was that they had brought this upon themselves. They had been warned. Earth had given them a chance to turn back. But they had laughed at the warning, mocked humanity's defiance. Now, the ruins of their fleet floated above Earth, a testament to their arrogance. On Earth, the leaders watched in silence as the last enemy ships disappeared from their sensors. They had won, but this was only the beginning. The Galactic Empire would not forget this defeat. They would return, possibly with even greater force. But humanity was ready. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was not weak, that they would not be conquered. The next time the Empire came, they would be prepared. And the galaxy would finally learn to fear the species they had once dismissed. The remnants of the Galactic Empire's once mighty fleet drifted lifelessly in space. Smoke and debris floated in the void, marking the graves of thousands of Imperial soldiers who had been caught in Earth's brutal counterattack. What had once been a proud invasion force was now nothing more than shattered metal and silence. The Empire had come expecting an easy conquest, but they had walked into a nightmare. On one of the last surviving command ships, Grand Admiral Carvex sat in his chair, gripping the armrests so tightly his claws dug into the metal. His mind raced as he replayed the battle over and over. How had this happened? The humans were supposed to be primitive, weak, nothing more than an afterthought in the vastness of the Empire. And yet, here he was, watching his once invincible fleet crumble like dry leaves. His officers moved frantically around him, their voices filled with desperation. Reports of casualties, damage, and the complete failure of their invasion flooded the communication channels. None of it made sense. The Empire's technology was superior. Their fleet was massive. They had conquered dozens of worlds before. But against Earth, they had been utterly outmatched. A warning siren blared through the ship, making Carvex's blood turn cold. The humans weren't done. Sensors detected movement from Earth's warships. Unlike the massive, bulky vessels of the Empire, these human ships were sleek, fast, and terrifyingly efficient. They moved like hunters circling wounded prey, and Carvex knew exactly what that made him and his fleet. The largest of the human ships sent out a transmission, but it wasn't a demand for surrender. There were no negotiations, no threats. Instead, the message was simple. You were warned. You did not listen. Then the attack resumed. One by one, the remaining Imperial ships fell. The humans' weapons tore through Imperial defenses like paper. Shield generators overloaded. Hulls buckled. Explosions ripped through decks, sending debris and bodies into the void. There was no mercy, no hesitation. The humans fought with an efficiency that made Carvex's scales crawl. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment. One of Carvex's officers, a young lieutenant, turned to him, eyes wide with terror. "Grand Admiral, we must retreat." "We." His words were cut off as the ship shuddered violently. A direct hit. Lights flickered. Consoles sparked. Klaxons wailed, signaling the inevitable. Carvex gritted his teeth. Retreat. Was there even a way out? Another explosion rocked the ship. The power flickered, and for the first time in his long military career, Grand Admiral Carvex felt something he had never known before. Fear. Across the bridge, another officer shouted, "Admiral, incoming transmission from the High Command." Carvex turned sharply. The High Command. Of course, they had been watching. His disgrace was now on full display. "Put it through," he growled. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Supreme Chancellor Orville, the highest-ranking ruler of the Empire. His eyes burned with rage, his expression cold as steel. "Grand Admiral Carvex," Orville's voice was sharp as a blade. "Explain." Carvex swallowed hard. He had no explanation, only failure. "My lord, the humans." "I don't want excuses," Orville interrupted. "I want results. You were given the largest fleet in the sector. You were given the most advanced weaponry in the Empire. And yet, here you are, losing to a backwater species. Do you understand what this means?" Carvex did. The entire Empire had seen this defeat. The enemy, the so-called primitive humans, had just embarrassed the most powerful force in the galaxy. And that meant something dangerous. Weakness. The Empire ruled through fear. Planets surrendered before battles even began, because they believed the Empire was unstoppable. But now the humans had shattered that illusion. The galaxy had just seen the impossible. The Empire had been beaten. And if humans could do it, what was stopping others from trying? Carvex's thoughts were cut short as a new voice came through the speakers. It was not Orville. It was the humans. A woman's voice, calm but firm, echoed across the bridge. "This is Admiral Morgan of the Terran Defense Fleet. To the surviving Empire vessels. You have one chance. Flee, never return. If you do, we will not hesitate to erase you from existence." The transmission ended. Silence filled the Imperial bridge. The message was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. Carvex clenched his fists. He could not fight back. His fleet was in ruins. His soldiers were dead. He had no choice but to obey. With a heavy heart, he turned to his crew and gave the order he never thought he would say. "All remaining ships, retreat." With what little power they had left, the last of the Imperial ships turned and jumped into hyperspace, fleeing from the battlefield. Carvex did not look back. He could not bear to see the wreckage of his fleet, the floating graves of his soldiers. As the jump drive engaged, Carvex let out a slow breath. This was not over. Earth had won this battle. But Carvex swore to himself, this was not the end. The Empire would return. And next time, they would not underestimate humanity. The Imperial fleet limped back to its territory, battered and humiliated. What was meant to be a glorious conquest had turned into a disaster of historic proportions. The name Earth now carried a weight of dread across the galaxy. The invincible Galactic Empire had been humbled. Grand Admiral Carvex sat alone in the dimly lit war room aboard the largest remaining battleship, the Vorax Wrath. The stench of burned circuits filled the air. His ship had barely survived, its hull scarred, its crew demoralized. Reports of losses flooded his desk. Dozens of capital ships destroyed, hundreds of thousands of troops lost, and worst of all, the Empire's reputation shattered. A low growl rumbled in his throat as he clenched his fists. How had it come to this? The humans were supposed to be weak, primitive. They weren't part of the great galactic alliances. They had been ignored for centuries. And yet, in one battle, they had fought with such precision, brutality, and efficiency that it sent a message to the entire galaxy. Earth was not to be challenged. The door to the war room slid open. Carvex didn't look up. He already knew who had entered. High General Vorthis, one of the Empire's most feared military strategists, stepped forward. His deep red uniform, once pristine, was now singed with battle damage. His reptilian features were hardened, his eyes filled with frustration. "We should have wiped them out," Vorthis said, his voice like gravel grinding against metal. Carvex exhaled sharply. "We underestimated them." "No," Vorthis countered. "We didn't underestimate them. We had no idea what we were dealing with." Carvex finally looked up, his cold gaze meeting Vorthis. "Explain." The general pulled up a holographic display. It flickered to life, showing footage from the battle. The humans' warships moved differently. They adapted, changed formations in real time, and attacked with unrelenting precision. Every shot was calculated. Every maneuver had a purpose. "Their technology is not superior to ours," Vorthis admitted, narrowing his eyes. "But their tactics, their strategy, it's beyond anything we've ever faced." Carvex studied the footage in silence. He had fought in countless wars, crushed dozens of rebellions, and led campaigns across the stars. But this was different. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to annihilate. "We lost an entire fleet," Carvex muttered, "to an enemy that should not have been a threat." Vorthis crossed his arms. "They gave us a warning. We laughed at it. And now, the galaxy has seen what happens when Earth is threatened." Carvex's claws tapped against the metal table. He could already imagine the political chaos unfolding in the Imperial High Command. The Supreme Chancellor would be furious. The other military leaders would demand answers. Allies of the Empire might start questioning their loyalty. And worst of all, rebellions could break out in the outer colonies. "The humans have done more than just defeat us," Carvex said darkly. "They've shaken the very foundation of our rule." A cold silence settled between them. Vorthis leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There's something else." Carvex raised an eyebrow. Vorthis tapped a control panel, and new footage appeared. This was not from the battle. It was from before the attack, classified intelligence reports on Earth. "I had our spies investigate their history," Vorthis explained. "I thought we were dealing with an average species. I was wrong." The footage played. Carvex watched as centuries of warfare unfolded before his eyes. Human history was a brutal saga of war, conquest, and survival. They had destroyed each other in conflicts that dwarfed even the largest imperial battles. And yet, each time, they had rebuilt. Stronger, smarter, deadlier. Carvex's claws tightened against the table as the realization set in. "They have been at war with themselves for their entire existence," Vorthis continued. "They are not conquerors like us. They are survivors. They have evolved in war, perfected it, and when the time came, they turned that perfection against us." Carvex watched as the footage showed nuclear explosions, orbital bombardments, urban warfare, and relentless battles that lasted for years. He saw human soldiers, wounded, outnumbered, yet refusing to surrender. He saw entire civilizations destroyed, only for humanity to rise again, stronger than before. Vorthis looked Carvex directly in the eye. "We picked a fight with a species that has been forging itself in fire for millennia." Carvex felt a chill run down his spine. This changed everything. If the Empire had any hope of fighting back, they needed to understand their enemy. They needed to learn how humans fought, how they thought, how they won, and most importantly, how to stop them. But deep down, Carvex knew the truth. There might not be a way to stop them. The Empire had faced countless enemies before, but never anything like this. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Imperial High Command was in chaos. The once mighty Galactic Empire, feared across the known universe, had suffered a defeat so devastating that it shook the very foundation of its rule. The battle against the humans should have been an easy conquest, a display of power to remind the galaxy why the Empire stood above all. Instead, it had turned into a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. The footage of their defeat had spread like wildfire. Every species across the stars had seen the unstoppable might of the Empire crumble against the terrifying efficiency of humanity's war machines. The proud fleets that once commanded obedience had been reduced to ruins, their burning wreckage drifting in space as a silent warning. And the worst part, the humans hadn't even sent their full force. The survivors of the battle had barely escaped with their lives. Among them was Grand Admiral Carvex, one of the most ruthless and brilliant tacticians in Imperial history. Yet, despite his experience, he had been forced to retreat, a word he had never associated with himself before. Now, as he stood before the Supreme Chancellor and the other high command officials, he could feel their eyes burning into him. They wanted answers. They wanted revenge. But most of all, they wanted to understand what had just happened. The Supreme Chancellor, an aging but formidable figure, leaned forward in his chair, his cold gaze fixed on Carvex. The tension in the room was thick, the silence heavy. "Explain," the Chancellor finally said, his voice calm, yet carrying an undeniable authority. Carvex took a deep breath. He had been preparing for this moment. He had replayed the battle in his mind 1,000 times, trying to find the moment when everything had gone wrong. "They warned us," Carvex said, his voice steady. "The humans warned us. We ignored them." The room remained silent, but Carvex could sense the barely contained rage within the assembled officials. "They were supposed to be weak," one of the commanders snapped. "A minor species. Insignificant." Carvex turned his gaze toward the speaker, his expression unreadable. "That was our mistake. We assumed that because they had no major presence in the galactic political sphere, they were incapable of posing a threat." He shook his head. "We were wrong." The Supreme Chancellor narrowed his eyes. "How wrong?" Carvex exhaled slowly, completely. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a holographic display in the center of the war table. The room dimmed slightly as the projection flickered to life, showing footage from the battle. It was brutal. The once invincible Imperial fleet was torn apart. The humans' warships moved with unnatural precision, adapting their strategies in real time. They were smaller, older, and lacked the raw power of the Empire's capital ships. But none of that mattered. They fought like nothing the Empire had ever faced. "They don't just wage war," Carvex continued. "They evolve during war. Their tactics shift mid-battle. Their formations change unpredictably. It's as if they've learned how to counter us before we even make a move." The footage showed human ships weaving through the Imperial fleet, dodging blasts with split-second timing. Then came the boarding operations, human soldiers breaching Imperial vessels, moving through corridors like ghosts, taking out entire squads with deadly efficiency. "They don't waste time with honor or protocol," Carvex said grimly. "They strike where it hurts. They dismantle their enemies from within." One of the admirals scoffed. "So they're cunning. We've dealt with cunning enemies before." Carvex turned his cold gaze toward him. "Not like this." The footage changed again. This time, it showed something even more chilling. Human ground troops, outnumbered 10-1, fighting as if the odds were in their favor. They didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They adapted, endured, and slaughtered their enemies with terrifying precision. Carvex let the silence linger before delivering the final blow. "We believed we were fighting an ordinary enemy," he said. "But the humans are not ordinary." Another flick of his wrist, and the display changed again. This time, it showed classified data, intelligence reports that had been gathered about Earth and its history. The room fell completely silent as the assembled leaders watched. Centuries of war. Brutal conflicts that lasted for decades. Empires rising and falling, entire civilizations wiped from history. And yet humanity always survived, always rebuilt, always learned. The Supreme Chancellor's expression darkened as he watched the footage. He had seen countless wars, but nothing like this. Vorthas, the High General, spoke next. His voice was low, calculated. "They are not a species of warriors," he said. "They are a species forged in war." The realization sank into the room like a heavy stone. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had ruled with an iron fist. Every species they encountered had fallen in line or been crushed beneath their power. But now, they faced an enemy that did not break, an enemy that grew stronger when challenged, an enemy that had given them one warning. And that warning had been ignored. Carvex shut off the hologram and turned to face the Supreme Chancellor directly. "We must make a decision," he said firmly. "Either we retreat from this conflict entirely, or we prepare for a war unlike anything we have ever fought before." The room was tense. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, after a long silence, the Supreme Chancellor leaned forward, his gaze like ice. His next words sent a chill through the room. "We have never surrendered before," he said, "and we will not start now." Carvex's jaw tightened. He had expected this. The Empire was about to make its biggest mistake yet. They were going to war with humanity. And this time, the humans wouldn't just defend. They would retaliate. The Supreme Chancellor's decision sent a shockwave through the Galactic Empire. The declaration of war against humanity was not just a strategic move. It was a statement, a refusal to acknowledge defeat. The Empire had never surrendered, never backed down, and it would not start now. But deep within the Imperial ranks, there was unease. Grand Admiral Carvex stood on the bridge of his new command ship, staring at the fleet assembled before him. Thousands of warships, the pride of the Empire, floated in formation, ready to strike. It was the largest fleet ever gathered for a single war. And yet, Carvex could not shake the feeling that it was still not enough. The reports had been coming in for weeks. The humans were preparing, but not in the way the Empire had expected. There were no grand displays of power, no massive fleet movements. Instead, Earth was silent. Too silent. Carvex turned to his tactical officer. "Any new movements from the human forces?" The officer shook his head. "No, sir. Their fleet remains stationed near their home system. Defensive positions only. No sign of an attack." Carvex frowned. It didn't make sense. The humans had proven their capability in battle. Their warships had annihilated the first Imperial invasion force with brutal efficiency. Why weren't they striking first? A thought crept into Carvex's mind, one that made his blood run cold. "What if they're not preparing for war?" he murmured. His second-in-command, Vice Admiral Korin, raised an eyebrow. "Then what are they preparing for?" Carvex didn't answer. He didn't know, and that terrified him. Meanwhile, deep within human space, a different kind of war council was taking place. Inside a heavily secured military base on Earth, high-ranking human leaders gathered around a digital display. Unlike the chaotic and panicked meetings of the Galactic Empire, this room was silent, focused, and deadly serious. Admiral Cole, the Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, studied the reports in front of him. Across from him, General Vasquez of the Planetary Ground Forces tapped her fingers against the table, her expression unreadable. "This is an opportunity," Vasquez said finally. Cole looked up. "You're suggesting we let them come?" She nodded. "We could scramble the fleet, push them back, strike first. But that's what they expect. If we hit them now, they'll just dig in, reinforce, and drag this war out." She leaned forward. "But if we make them overcommit, if we let them think they have us backed into a corner." A cold smile formed on Cole's lips. "They'll walk into the perfect trap." Every military officer in the room understood. The Empire thought humanity was playing defense. But the truth was, Earth had never planned to fight this war the way the Empire wanted. They weren't going to engage in pointless battles. They weren't going to waste resources fighting for meaningless star systems. They were going to break the Empire from within. Back on the Imperial warfront, Grand Admiral Carvex received the final attack orders. The Supreme Chancellor's voice rang through the command bridge, the message broadcasted to every ship in the fleet. The time for waiting is over. The time for hesitation is gone. The Empire will crush these creatures and remind the galaxy who truly rules. The bridge crew cheered, but Carvex did not. Instead, he stared at the final tactical report from intelligence agents stationed near Earth's borders. Something was wrong. The human defenses were too perfect. The way their ships were positioned, the way their supply lines remained untouched. They weren't in chaos at all. They were in control. Carvex clenched his jaw. He knew war. He had fought in more battles than any living Imperial officer, and he had never seen an enemy this calm before a full-scale invasion. Something wasn't adding up. Then, an urgent transmission came through from one of their forward scout fleets. Grand Admiral. The scout captain's voice was panicked, frantic. We just lost contact with 3 recon vessels near the human borders. Static. The transmission cut off. Carvex's blood turned to ice. It had begun, and the Empire had just walked straight into a nightmare. As the Empire's massive fleet surged toward Earth's border, the tension reached its breaking point. Imperial commanders were confident. No, they were sure that nothing could stop them now. They had crushed entire star systems with ease. They had wiped out species that had dared to resist their rule. This would be no different. But they had underestimated one key thing. Humans. On the surface of Earth, Admiral Cole stood at the heart of his military command center, his eyes glued to the large display. His mind was focused, sharp, as he analyzed the incoming data streams. Every human fleet commander was in position, every ship prepared. But the true weapon, the one that could turn the tide of the war, lay in their ultimate plan. "You're certain they're in position?" Cole asked, his voice calm but carrying the weight of countless lives. General Vasquez, standing at the other side of the command table, nodded grimly. "Absolutely. The Empire's fleet is moving straight into the kill zone." Cole turned to the senior intelligence officer, who was monitoring the Empire's advance. "What's the status of their forward scouts?" "They've been silent for over an hour, sir. All signals have gone dark." The officer's tone was heavy. "It looks like the Empire's first wave has already fallen into our trap." A slow smile crept across Cole's face. He hadn't been wrong. The humans had lured the Empire in, not with force, but with patience. And now, with the enemy fleet nearing Earth, they were going to deliver the final blow. Meanwhile, the Imperial fleet continued its advance. Grand Admiral Carvex stood in the heart of his flagship, surrounded by his officers, staring at the sprawling holographic map of the battlefield. He felt uneasy, but his pride as an Imperial officer kept him from voicing his doubts. This would be a victory. It had to be. "We're entering the Earth system," his tactical officer reported, voice steady despite the situation. "We should be within range of their planetary defenses soon." Carvex nodded, trying to suppress the unease gnawing at his thoughts. "Prepare to engage with full force. No mercy." The order was given, and the fleet surged forward. The vast expanse of space ahead of them seemed empty, silent. But Carvex had lived through too many wars not to sense the growing weight of that silence. As they neared Earth, a strange energy pulsed through the fleet, an inexplicable feeling of dread. Then, without warning, everything erupted. A sudden explosion of light and sound tore through the dark vacuum of space as a human warship appeared out of nowhere. It was massive, far larger than any ship the Empire had encountered. The ships around Carvex's flagship shook as a barrage of weapons fire struck them from every direction, faster than they could react. "All ships, brace for impact," Carvex shouted, but his words were drowned out by the overwhelming chaos unfolding before him. The first Imperial ship fell, then the next. Human ships, smaller than the Empire's, but far more agile, appeared from hidden positions around Earth's orbit. They had been waiting, silently, biding their time. The Empire's scouts had failed to find them, just as Cole had planned. The humans' warships weren't just fighting, they were decimating the Imperial fleet. Every blow landed with pinpoint accuracy. Every counterattack from the Empire swiftly crushed under the humans' firepower. Carvex's eyes widened in disbelief. How could this be? They had the superior numbers, the advanced technology, the overwhelming might, and yet the humans were winning. No, destroying them. This can't be happening, Carvex muttered to himself, gripping the edge of his command console. The Imperial flagship's shields failed, and explosions rattled the ship. A warning siren blared as the fleet's top commanders scrambled to assess the situation. "This is a trap," shouted the tactical officer. "We've been lured into a dead zone." Carvex clenched his fists. They had walked right into the humans' hands, and now the fleet was being torn apart. But even in the chaos, he wasn't ready to give up. "Regroup. Reinforce the shields. Push forward. We can still crush them." It was too late. From the shadows of Earth's orbit, a final fleet of human warships emerged. These ships were massive, designed for one purpose: to annihilate entire fleets in a single strike. Their weapons were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. A single ship unleashed a beam of pure energy that disintegrated 2 Imperial destroyers in an instant. It fired again, and the flagship Carvex commanded was hit square in the middle, its hull buckling under the immense force. "Admiral, the fleet is lost." A voice came from behind him. "We need to retreat now." Carvex looked around at his failing forces. His pride, his loyalty to the Empire, screamed at him to keep fighting, to push through and win. But deep down, he knew the truth. The Empire had miscalculated. They had underestimated the humans, and now they would pay the price. With the last of his strength, Carvex turned to his crew. "Prepare to evacuate the ship. We've lost." As the Imperial fleet retreated, fleeing in disarray, Carvex's thoughts lingered on the humans. He had underestimated them, and now they had proven they were not just a threat. They were a force that could not be ignored, and Earth had delivered its warning. The Galactic Empire had ignored it. Now, the Empire would face the consequences.